Well, it once again seems like the fearmongers and the profiteers on YouTube, the so-called gun channels on YouTube, are once again doing the work of Bloomberg and the anti-gun leftist courts, and I have to come on here once again and set the record straight. Hey everybody, Yankee here. Unfortunately, I'm sure a lot of you have heard from some supposedly pro-gun sources over the last day or so that SIG Sauer has bribed some politicians to give them immunity for when their dangerous guns go off on their own. That this is pretty much SIG admitting guilt, because instead of fixing the guns or admitting something's wrong, they've, bribed some politicians to just make it to where nobody can sue them when those mean old guns go off on their own. And like I said, you're hearing that a lot from a lot of supposedly pro-gun sources. The same sources that like to pretend that guns go off on their own. And that's just not true. That's generally not true. I mean, sometimes there are some really defective guns. But here's the thing. When a gun model or a gun design is defective, you can make it go off when you test it. So far, no one's been able to make a SIG P320 go off on its own. Hasn't happened. And this law does not give them immunity if that does happen. What the law actually says is that the Bloomberg groups, the anti-gun groups, the liberal judges, and the ignorant juries can't be convinced to go along with stupid schemes like, well, if the gun manufacturer didn't do everything they possibly could to stop an idiot from misusing the gun, well, then they can be liable. Because remember, SIG hasn't lost any lawsuits on the gun going off on its own. Every suit that was based on that has lost. Every gun group, anti-gun group that has tried to prove they can go off on their own has failed. It just doesn't happen. It's an extraordinary claim to even say it does. And people should require extraordinary evidence to believe it. But unfortunately, there's a lot of talking heads on the internet who I now suspect are taking anti-gun money. We all know they love to take money from the big gun groups and everything to say things that aren't beneficial to the pro-gun cause. As long as money keeps coming in, their channel grows, that's all they care about. Hell, I've got a recording of one of the biggest channels on YouTube, one of the biggest gun channels saying, they don't care if the people they deal with are liars and racists. As long as it makes them money and grows their channel, that's all they care about. And I've played it before for my viewers. So I'm starting to think some of these people are taking Bloomberg money to spread garbage like SIG P320 is going off on their own. Because like I said, hasn't been a single case proven of that. Hasn't been a case even shown that makes it seem like it's even possible. One guy did a video that basically just showed he has no understanding of metallurgy and no understanding of mechanics, because when I said, hey, what are your qualifications in these fields? You should come in and talk to me. He hasn't. And no one who spreads this garbage has. They're all cowards. They know they can't come in and face any scrutiny. They have to just talk to a camera. And I'm once again laying it out. Anybody wants to pretend that P320s go off on their own, come talk to me. Unless you're a pussy. Because if not, admit you're lying. Because you're lying. For money, for profit, for views, etc. And like I said, what this law today did, it just made it to where you can't sue SIG Sauer based on the fact that their guns are too easy to shoot. That every time you pull the trigger, it goes off. Because that's the only case they've lost so far. A judge and a jury were convinced to uphold that if you didn't make it as safe as it could possibly be, well, then you're responsible. And is that the precedent that people in the gun community want to support? Do you want every single gun that comes out start having magazine disconnects, trigger safeties, firing pin blocks, manual safeties, every single chamber indicators? Do you want them to have to start make every gun so freaking hard to use that you're not even going to be able to use them quickly? Is that what you want? Because that's what this ideology is all about. The Bloomberg group is trying to get it made to where there's lots of court precedents that say, hey, if you slam your gun in your holster and your shirt tail gets in it and pulls the trigger and it goes off, well, that's the manufacturer's fault because there should have been a manual safety that stopped that. That's the things they've been winning on. It's that kind of mindset. And a lot of people in the gun community who I think are on the payroll of some anti-gun organizations as well as the pro-gun organizations, because there's been lots of evidence in the past that some of the big national corporations work hand in hand with the anti-gunners and they trade profits. So I don't think it's that outlandish to think this, but as I was saying, all this law does is it prevents ridiculous ideology like that from taking hold against SIG Sauer. That if the manufacturer didn't put enough safeties on there that an idiot couldn't misuse it, they're responsible. And that's what, like I said, these people are promoting this whole idea. This is Bloomberg's goal. They take these cases to leftist courts with leftist judges and get these types of verdicts. They set a precedent. They use juries that they hand select that they don't know anything about guns. And they're like, well, if they just put a safety on it, it wouldn't have done that. So it's the manufacturer's fault, and they go along with that. Well, they should have put a safety on it. A lot of guns don't have safeties. And like I said, do you want every gun to start having to have every safety, or else the manufacturer is going to face liability? I don't want that. That's a very anti-gun position. And that would bankrupt most gun manufacturers. So that's ridiculous. And it would allow lawsuits to start pouring in every time someone shot themselves in the foot with a revolver. They'd be like, well, why wasn't there a trigger block on there that would prevent me from pulling the trigger accidentally? Like I had to push it through before I could pull it. That would not be far from being the next step. Why isn't there a crossbar safety that I have to push before I can even pull the trigger? Why isn't there a manual safety that doesn't allow me to cock the hammer? Or why isn't there a crossbar that I got to push out of the way before I can cock the hammer? That's the same ideology. It's the same mindset. You didn't make it foolproof. You didn't make it idiot-proof. The P320 is a gun that goes off every time you pull the trigger. And that trigger's light, so it can be accurate. And you can fire fast. And if you can't handle that type of gun, like I know I can't, I won't carry one. Don't carry it. Don't give it to police that can't handle it. That's what that gun was made for. That's why the military wanted a safety on it. Because they know they don't trust people in the military to keep their fingers off the triggers. So they want a manual safety. If you need a manual safety, get a gun with a manual safety. But don't be supporting these fearmongers and these talking heads, these profiteers who are getting money from somewhere to promote these ridiculous ideas. Now, some of them, not everybody that's jumping on the bandwagon is taking evil money. A lot of them just want the views. They want to grow their channels. They want to raise their advertising rates. But it's a really dangerous thing to be promoting just for your own self-promotion and self-interest. Because it's a real dangerous precedent to set. The idea that any gun that isn't foolproof against idiots, it's somehow the manufacturer's fault, because they should have thought of that. They should have thought that people are going to take their gun and slam it into holsters that's not made for it. They should have thought that people are going to play with them and then pretend they didn't touch the trigger. So they should have put safeties on it. They should have known people were going to pull the trigger when they didn't mean to. And you can start saying that about every gun. You can start saying, well, that person shot himself or someone else when he was cleaning the gun and there was no loaded chamber indicator. If there had been a loaded chamber indicator, he'd have known there was a bullet in there and that wouldn't have happened. That's what you're supporting. Like I said, P320s don't go off on their own. They go off when you pull the trigger, either deliberately or through negligence. That's what happens. Every test of the gun has shown that. The people who say otherwise are idiots or liars. And the ones that pretend like, oh, well, this part's MIM, so that can cause the design to do that. No, that's not true. You're just saying a bunch of gobbledygook and pretending like you have some authority on it. And I've challenged all of you to come talk to me. If you're such experts, why would you be afraid of me? I ain't an expert. So, well, I am a self-proclaimed internet professional gun expert, but not an expert on metallurgy or mechanics. So come on in and educate me if you're right. You can't because you're cowards and liars. So everyone that sees one of these gun channels promote this kind of bullshit like SIG P320s go off on their own, or, oh, they got full immunity, that admits they're guilty. Whenever you hear that stuff, challenge them. Say, hey, why aren't you over talking to Yankee? Or have me on your channel. So I can come in and talk to you on your channel. Has to be live. I won't pre-tape it because I've fallen for that garbage before. But step up. if you think you can prove this ridiculous claim, if you think you can justify your lies about what this new law does, and you think you can justify your ideology that, yeah, they should be responsible, come on in, talk to me. So far, no one will. A lot of people in the comment section got a lot to say, but they never have anything to say to you because they know this ideology doesn't stand up. They know this notion that P320s go off on their own isn't true. They know it can't be recreated. It can't be caused to happen even when they're trying. It won't go off unless that trigger's pulled in every test they've done. When a gun is bad, I've seen bad guns before and manufacturers tried to cover it up. As soon as people tested them, it's like, oh yeah, these, every time you knocked them over, they'd go off, 1 out of 4 times. Nothing like that's happening with SIG. They've only lost one lawsuit, and they lost it because the judge and an ignorant jury were convinced by the anti-gun money that if the gun wasn't foolproof, well then that's not the fool's fault when they misuse it. It's the company that made it.